James had always loved exploring new places. Ever since he was a young boy, he felt excited whenever he looked at maps or watched nature documentaries. As he grew older, this interest turned into a real habit. Whenever he found free time, he planned small trips, sometimes to forests, sometimes to mountains, and sometimes to old historical towns. His friends often said he had a brave heart, but James felt it was not bravery. It was simply curiosity, a strong desire to understand the world around him. One day he decided to go on a long hiking trip through the desert areas of the American Southwest. He had read many articles about the beautiful landscapes, tall rock formations, and peaceful open skies. He imagined it would be a perfect place to enjoy silence and think about life. James was going through a busy time and felt he needed a break. A few days in nature, away from noise, seemed like the best solution. He prepared carefully. He bought new hiking shoes, packed enough food, filled his water bottles, and carried a compass and map. He also checked the weather forecast, which said there might be light winds, but nothing dangerous. James felt fully ready. He believed that as long as he stayed calm and followed the map, he would be safe. Before leaving, he told his family he would return in a few days and promised to keep his phone charged. He started the hike early in the morning. The sun was shining softly, and the desert air felt cool. The path looked clear, and everything seemed peaceful. James walked slowly, enjoying the sights around him, the golden sand, the quiet hills in the distance, and the small desert plants standing bravely against the dry wind. He took pictures, stopped to rest, and admired the beauty of the land. As the day went on, the sun became brighter, and the temperature started to rise. James drank plenty of water and made sure he followed the map closely. After a few hours, he reached an open area surrounded by tall rocks. According to the map, he was still on the right track. He sat on a stone, ate a snack, and felt happy with his progress. Everything was going according to plan, but nature often changes without warning. Around afternoon, James noticed the wind picking up. At first, it was gentle, just enough to move the dust a little. But soon the wind became stronger and he could feel grains of sand hitting his arms. He looked up and saw the sky turning slightly brown at the edges. His heart skipped a beat. He had read about sandstorms in the desert, but he never expected one to form so quickly. Within minutes, the wind grew louder and harsher. Sand began to fly everywhere, making it difficult to see clearly. James tried to stay calm, reminding himself that panicking would not help. He wrapped a cloth around his face to protect his eyes and mouth. He held the map tightly, but the wind kept pulling at it. The world around him started to blur, and the beautiful view he enjoyed earlier disappeared behind a thick curtain of dust. He tried to follow the path he remembered, walking slowly and carefully. But the storm grew stronger. He could no longer see the rocks, the sky, or even the land a few feet ahead. His compass helped a little, but the storm pushed him in unknown directions. Every step he took felt unsure. He felt small in front of nature's power. After struggling for a long time, James finally found a large rock formation and crouched behind it, hoping the storm would pass soon. The wind roared like a giant engine, and sand kept hitting him from all sides. He covered his head and tried to breathe calmly, but the dry air made it difficult. It took a long time for the sandstorm to weaken. When the wind finally slowed down, the world looked different. The land around him had changed shape. Some small dunes were now taller, and the path he was following had disappeared completely. His footprints had vanished, and the familiar landmarks he remembered were nowhere to be seen. The sky looked clear again, but James now felt a deep worry rising inside his chest. He tried to understand where he was, but he could not match the land with his map anymore. He walked in one direction for a while, hoping to find something familiar, but everything looked the same: open land, scattered rocks, and endless sand. Hours passed, and the heat made him tired. His water supply began to decrease faster than planned. Still, he kept walking. He did not want to give up. He believed that if he continued moving, he might eventually find a sign, a path, or a place where someone could help him. But the sun was setting, and shadows grew long. The desert, which looked warm and friendly in the morning, now felt wide and lonely. As night approached, the air became cooler, and James felt weak from the long walk. His legs hurt, and his throat felt dry. He found a small shaded area near some rocks and sat down trying to rest. He checked his phone, but there was no signal. He felt alone, but he tried to stay hopeful. He told himself that many travelers had faced difficulties before, and he would find a way too. Time passed slowly. The stars came out, shining brightly in the clear night sky. James looked at them, feeling both comforted and lost. The silence of the desert was peaceful, but it also made him aware of his situation. He had no clear direction, little water, and no one nearby. The next morning, he woke up feeling tired but determined to keep going. He got up, stretched his legs, and continued walking. But the heat returned quickly, and soon he felt dizzy. His steps became slower. His backpack felt heavier. He tried to drink his remaining water carefully, but he could feel his energy fading. By midday, he felt too weak to walk further. He sat down on the sand, closed his eyes, and tried to regain his strength. But his body refused to move. He lay back slowly, hoping a short rest would help him recover. The sun above him felt bright, but as he closed his eyes, the world around him began to blur again. His breathing became slow and shallow. He felt himself drifting into sleep, not knowing if he would wake up again. When he finally opened his eyes, he was not lying on the desert ground anymore. Instead, he felt a comfortable surface underneath him. The light around him was softer, and he sensed movement nearby. His vision cleared slowly, and he saw shapes of people standing around him. Their clothes were different from anything he had seen before, simple, traditional, and beautiful. They looked calm but cautious as they watched him. James blinked several times, trying to understand where he was and who these people were. His heart raced with confusion, but he was too weak to sit up. One of the people gently placed a hand on his arm, signaling that he was safe and should stay still. He realized he had been found, rescued by a group of Apache community members who had discovered him unconscious in their protected land. They had carried him to their settlement to help him recover. James tried to speak, but his voice was weak. Still, he felt relief. After hours of fear and exhaustion, he was no longer alone. But he also felt nervous. He had no idea what would happen next. He didn't know their rules, their beliefs, or how they lived. All he knew was that he had accidentally crossed into a place he did not understand, and now his fate rested in the hands of people he had never met before. Yet at that moment, as he lay there recovering, one thing was clear. His journey had changed completely, and nothing ahead would be ordinary. When James opened his eyes again the next morning, the gentle light of dawn entered the small room where he rested. The roof was made of wood, and the walls had a warm, earthy color. A soft blanket covered him, and for a moment he forgot where he was. Then the memories returned. The desert, the storm, the long walk, and finally, collapsing from exhaustion. Now he lay in a place he did not recognize, safe but unsure of what would happen next. He tried to sit up slowly, and this time he felt stronger. His throat was still dry, but the sharp weakness he felt earlier had faded. A door made of wooden planks opened quietly, and an elderly woman entered. Her steps were slow but steady. She carried a bowl of warm broth and placed it gently beside him. Her face showed kindness, but also calm seriousness, the kind that comes from years of wisdom. James whispered a soft thank you. She nodded, but did not speak much. She simply guided his hand toward the bowl, encouraging him to drink. The broth tasted simple but comforting. Every sip made him feel more awake. After a while, two younger members entered the room. They observed him carefully, making sure he was feeling better. Their clothes were traditional, beautifully made with patterns that looked meaningful. Their expressions were thoughtful, not unfriendly, just cautious. They spoke to each other in a language he did not understand. James realized that he needed to be patient. He was the stranger here. When he tried to stand, one of them gently placed a hand on his shoulder, signaling that he should rest longer. James nodded, understanding that they were worried he might still be weak. Hours passed, and by late morning, he was able to step outside. He walked slowly, supported by a young man who stayed close to him. As he exited the room, he saw a settlement that felt like a world of its own. It was peaceful, surrounded by nature. Small homes stood in neat rows, made from natural materials. Smoke rose gently from a cooking area, and children played under the shade of a large tree. People looked at him with curiosity. Some paused their work to glance at him. Others smiled politely. No one seemed angry or unfriendly. But their eyes showed that they wanted to understand who he was and why he had wandered into their land. James felt a little nervous, but also fascinated. He had never seen a community so closely connected to nature. Everything looked carefully built, yet simple and meaningful. There were no loud machines, no busy roads, only the soft sound of people talking, working, and moving around with purpose. A middle-aged man approached him. He looked strong and confident, someone who probably held responsibility in the community. Without speaking, he gestured for James to follow him. James obeyed quietly, knowing that he was completely in their care. They walked toward a larger structure, one that looked special compared to the rest. Outside, it stood a woman with a calm and dignified presence. Her posture was straight, her expression thoughtful, and her eyes sharp and observant. Even without being told, James sensed that she was the leader here, the woman others respected deeply. She welcomed him with a polite nod. The man who guided James spoke to her in their language, explaining something, possibly how they found him. James stood there quietly, unsure of what to say. He did not want to make any mistake. The woman finally spoke to him in clear English. "You were found unconscious near our valley. You were very weak. We brought you here to help you recover." Her voice was calm, each word chosen carefully. James felt relieved to hear a language he understood. "Thank you," he said softly. I didn't mean to enter your land. I got lost after the sandstorm." "We know," she replied. "The storm was strong. You were lucky someone found you." She studied him for a few moments, not with suspicion, but curiosity, trying to understand his intention, his character, and his situation. "You may stay here until your strength returns," she continued, "but you must be respectful. Our land is private, and people from outside do not enter without reason." James nodded quickly. "I understand. I'm grateful you helped me." The woman motioned for him to sit. They offered him water and a simple meal, and James felt his strength returning with each bite. The air around him was peaceful, and although he had been scared earlier, he now felt a strange sense of safety. Over the next few days, James slowly adjusted to life in the settlement. The people were welcoming but reserved. They were careful about their traditions, their home, and the privacy of their community. He could feel that they protected their land not out of fear, but out of love and respect. Every morning, James saw men and women working together, some gathering food, some preparing meals, and others teaching children. Their daily life was organized and calm. No one rushed, no one argued loudly. Everyone knew their role, and they performed it with dedication. James wanted to help, even with small tasks, so he wouldn't feel like a burden. At first, they hesitated, But when they saw that he genuinely wanted to contribute, they let him participate in simple activities. He carried water, helped clean small areas, and assisted with preparing firewood. These tasks were easy, but they made him feel included. He learned that they valued respect, truth, and harmony. They took care of nature like a family member. They believed the land had a spirit, and they treated it with deep gratitude. James admired this. In the busy world he came from, people often forgot to appreciate such things. One evening, children gathered around a fire while an elder told stories. James sat at a distance, listening quietly. Even though he could not understand every word, he felt warmth in the atmosphere. The fire crackled softly, and the children's faces glowed with excitement as they listened. James felt like he was witnessing something ancient and meaningful. But not everything was carefree. He always sensed a small tension in the air, not hostility, but seriousness. The community was careful with him because he was still an outsider. Some members kept a polite distance. Others observed him thoughtfully. He understood their caution. He had entered their private land without knowing, and it would take time for them to trust him fully. One afternoon, the man who had guided him earlier came to speak to him. He explained that the valley James wandered into was considered sacred. Outsiders rarely entered it, not because it was forbidden, but because it was important to the community's history and culture. James apologized sincerely. He assured them he had no intention of disturbing anything, and they accepted his words. Days passed, and James felt healthier and stronger. He could walk long distances again. His energy had returned fully, but the question of what would happen next remained unanswered. He did not want to leave without knowing whether the community allowed it, and he also felt he needed to understand what they expected from him. Whenever he saw the leader, the woman others referred to with deep respect, she always carried an air of quiet strength. She watched everything carefully, making thoughtful decisions. James admired her leadership, even though he barely knew her personally. She seemed firm, but fair. One morning, a young member approached him and informed him that the leader wanted to speak with him that afternoon. James felt a flutter of nervousness. He had expected that this moment would come eventually, but now that it was here, he felt unsure. He spent the hours wondering what she would say. Would she ask him to leave immediately? Would she question him further? Would she warn him about something? He had no answers. When the afternoon came, he was guided to a quiet area near a shaded tree. The leader stood there, waiting. The air around them was calm, the sky bright and clear. She looked at him with the same thoughtful expression she always had. For a few moments, she said nothing, letting the silence settle comfortably. James waited patiently. Finally, she spoke. "You have been here for some days now," she began. "You have seen our home, our way of life, and how we care for our land." James nodded. "You came here without meaning to," she continued, "but your presence has still touched something important. We value our privacy, we protect our traditions, and we choose carefully who learns about them." James listened carefully, his heart beating a little faster. Then she added, "I have something to ask of you, something important." James swallowed quietly, waiting. Her request would change the entire direction of his journey, but he did not yet know what it was. James sat quietly under the shade of the large tree, waiting for the leader to speak again. The breeze was soft, carrying the scent of warm sand and the distant sound of children playing. Yet the calmness around him did nothing to slow the rapid beating of his heart. He felt as if he stood on the edge of a moment that would decide everything about his future. The leader, known among her people for her wisdom and patience, remained still for a few seconds longer. It was as if she wanted him to fully understand the importance of the moment before revealing her thoughts. When she finally spoke, her voice was steady and clear. She chose her words carefully, as if each one needed to carry meaning. "You came here by accident," she said. "But accidents sometimes show us truths we do not expect. You were lost, tired, and alone. Yet you were found here in a place that most people never see." James nodded slowly, unsure of how to respond. Every word she spoke felt heavy, but not in a frightening way, more like she was guiding him toward something important. "Our people noticed something about you," she continued. "Even though you were afraid, you showed respect. You did not break anything. You did not behave in a careless way. You tried to help with small tasks, even when you did not fully understand our ways." James listened quietly, surprised to hear that they had observed him so closely. He had tried his best to be kind, simply because he felt grateful for being rescued, but he didn't think anyone had paid attention. The leader folded her hands gently. "Before we decide what happens next, there is something you need to understand. For many years, outsiders have created stories about us, stories that are not true. Some say things that damage our reputation. Some misunderstand our intentions. Some fear us without ever meeting us." Her expression softened, but there was a serious light in her eyes. "We cannot control what people say, but we can choose whom we trust." James felt his breath catch slightly. He did not know what she was leading to, but he sensed that her next words would be very important. "You have seen our home," she said. "You have eaten our food. You have watched our children play. You have seen that we live simply, seeking peace and balance with nature." "Yes," James said quietly. "I have seen that." "Then you also know that our way of life is gentle, respectful, and careful," she replied. "We protect our land because it is our history. We protect our traditions because they are the gifts of our ancestors." She paused for a long moment, as if measuring the air around them. Then she spoke the words that surprised James more than anything so far. "I want you to carry our truth outside these lands." James stared at her, unsure he understood correctly. "Carry your truth?" he repeated softly. "Yes," she said. "That is my request. That is my demand." James felt a wave of confusion mixed with disbelief. He had expected many things. Maybe she would ask him to leave quietly. Maybe she would tell him not to speak of this place at all. But asking him to share their truth, he had never imagined such a thing. The leader continued. "Many outsiders see the desert as empty, but we see it as a living friend. Many outsiders think we are closed off, but we are simply careful. You have seen how we live. You have seen that we welcome people in need. Now I want you to speak honestly when you return home." James leaned forward slightly. "What do you want me to say?" She looked into his eyes with calm seriousness. "Tell them we are not what the world imagines. Tell them about our kindness, our values, and the peace we protect. Share what you have seen. Not exaggerated, not changed, only the truth." James felt something shift inside him, a mixture of responsibility and surprise. He had never thought of himself as someone who could represent another community's story. He felt honored, but also uncertain. "Why me?" he asked gently. "I'm just a traveler. I don't have a large voice." "You have a story," she replied, "and stories travel farther than voices. People listen when someone speaks with honesty. You were a stranger who entered our land without meaning to. That makes your experience special. You came with no expectations, so others will trust your words." James lowered his gaze, considering her perspective. It was true that people often believed personal experiences more than formal reports or documentaries. A simple, honest story from a traveler could reach more hearts than a long speech. The leader continued, "This is not about speeches. It is not about fame. It is about truth. If people see us with understanding instead of fear, that helps us protect our way of life." James nodded slowly. The request was not small, but it felt meaningful. He could see how much this mattered to her and her community. He admired their dedication to peace and preservation. If sharing his experience could help, he was willing to try. "Will it be difficult?" he asked softly. She smiled gently. "Many important things are, but you will not be alone in this. The truth itself will support you." She stood up, signaling the conversation was coming to an end. But before she walked away, she added one more thing, something that touched him deeply. "Not everyone gets the chance to learn about another culture from the inside. You have been given this chance. Now you must decide how you will honor it." James sat quietly after she left, feeling the weight of her words. The more he thought about it, the more he understood the importance of what she had asked. Her request was not a burden. It was a responsibility based on trust. As the sun lowered in the sky, he walked slowly through the settlement. The children waved at him as they played near the shade. Some adults prepared dinner. Others sat in groups, talking softly. James realized that he had grown used to this peaceful life, and leaving it would not be easy. Yet he knew he must return home eventually. But now, returning home was not just about ending a trip. It carried a purpose. That evening, he sat by the fire with the community. They shared food with him as they always did, offering warm smiles and gentle hospitality. He felt accepted, not fully as one of them, but as a guest they respected. That respect made him even more determined to honor the leader's request. Later that night, he looked up at the sky filled with bright stars. He thought about how different life was here compared to the busy world he came from. Here, every star seemed closer, every breeze carried a story, every silence felt meaningful. He closed his eyes and whispered a quiet promise, a promise to speak truthfully, kindly and respectfully about all he had seen. The next day, he met the leader again. This time, he felt calmer, more certain of his answer. "I will do what you asked," he said. "I will share your truth, not to gain anything, but because it feels right." The leader nodded, her eyes reflecting gratitude. "Then you honor us with your promise," she said softly, "and we will honor you with our trust." In that moment, James felt a connection stronger than words. The trust she spoke of was not just a simple gesture. It was a bond built on understanding, respect, and shared humanity. He realized that the journey he thought would be about nature and adventure had turned into something much deeper. It had become a lesson about community, truth, and the importance of seeing the world with open eyes. And though he did not yet know how he would fulfill his promise, he knew one thing for certain: he would not break it. James woke up early the next morning with a strange mix of emotions swirling inside him. The soft sunlight entered the small room through the wooden window, casting warm squares of light on the floor. It was his last morning in the Apache settlement. He had grown used to the gentle routine of the community, the calm voices, the sound of children laughing, and the peaceful rhythm of nature. Now the idea of leaving filled him with both gratitude and sadness. He sat up slowly, letting the moment settle in his heart. He remembered the leader's words from the previous day, the promise he had made, and the responsibility he now carried. It felt big, but it also felt right. James believed that some journeys did not end when a person walked away. They continued inside the heart, shaping every step that came afterward. When he stepped outside, he saw the community already beginning their day. Some people prepared food, others carried tools, and children chased each other with cheerful energy. A few members smiled at him warmly, their expressions soft but meaningful. It was their way of saying goodbye. One young boy ran up to him and offered a small handmade bracelet made of colorful threads. James accepted it gently, touched by the simple but heartfelt gift. The boy smiled shyly, then ran back to join his friends. James tied the bracelet on his wrist, feeling a quiet promise in its woven threads, a promise to remember everything he had learned here. Soon, the man who had guided him on his first day approached him. His expression was calm but serious, as always. He carried a small bag and handed it to James. Inside were a few pieces of dried food and water, enough to help him on his return journey. James thanked him sincerely, knowing how thoughtful this gesture was. They walked together toward the leader's home. James felt his heart beat a little faster as they approached, the reality of leaving becoming more real with every step. The leader stood waiting outside, her posture calm and steady. She greeted him with a nod that carried both respect and warmth. "You are ready," she said simply. James nodded. "I think I am." She observed him quietly for a few seconds, then spoke with her usual measured tone. "You came here lost and tired, yet you leave with strength in your heart. Remember what you have learned about respect, peace, and balance. These are not just our values, they are lessons anyone can carry." James listened closely. Every word she spoke felt like something he would remember forever. "I will keep my promise," he said softly. "I will speak truthfully about what I saw here." The leader gave a faint smile, the kind that carried trust and understanding. "We know you will," she replied. "Your actions have already shown your character." She then offered him something small but meaningful, a stone pendant made from the smooth parts of the riverbed. It was simple, yet beautifully shaped. She placed it in his hand. "This is a symbol of our trust," she said. "Carry it with respect. Let it remind you of the truth you have seen." James felt deeply honored. He placed the pendant carefully around his neck, feeling its cool surface touch his skin. It was more than a gift. It was a part of their story, entrusted to him with sincerity. The community gathered quietly behind him. They stood at a respectful distance, not crowding him, but clearly wanting to be part of the farewell. Their presence made the moment feel even more special. The leader gestured toward the edge of the settlement, a narrow path leading out into the desert. "This path will guide you back," she said. "Follow it with patience. Nature will support your steps." James took a deep breath, grateful for the clear direction. He looked at the faces around him one last time, the kind elders, the hard-working adults, the playful children. In just a short period, they had shown him more kindness and peace than he had expected from strangers. To him, they no longer felt like strangers at all. "Thank you," he said softly, his voice filled with emotion, "for saving me and for trusting me." "You earned our trust," the leader said. "Now go forward with honesty." James turned toward the path. He walked slowly, taking one step at a time. At first, he felt the weight of sadness, knowing he was leaving a place that had quietly changed him. But as he continued, he also felt something else: clarity, a sense of direction, a feeling that he now had a purpose he never expected to find. The desert was warm, and the sky stretched endlessly above him. The land was quiet except for the gentle wind brushing through the sand. It took him several hours to travel, but the path felt easier than before. Every step reminded him of the community's trust and the promise he carried. When he finally reached a familiar area where the land began to show signs of civilization, James felt both relief and nostalgia. His phone signal returned, and he sent a message to his family, letting them know he was safe. They were worried but overjoyed to hear from him. They asked many questions, but James decided he would share everything with them once he returned home. He spent the night in a nearby town, resting in a small lodge. The bed felt soft, the room comfortable, but he found himself missing the simple quiet of the Apache settlement. The night there had felt alive with meaning. Here, everything seemed ordinary. He realized how much his heart had grown attached to the peaceful rhythms of the community. The next morning, James began his journey back home. The bus ride gave him hours to think. He watched the landscape pass by, remembering the faces of the people who had helped him. Their voices echoed in his mind, reminding him of their values, respect, truth, and harmony with nature. He held the stone pendant gently in his hand, feeling its smoothness, its steady weight. When he reached home, his family rushed to greet him. They embraced him, relieved that he was safe. He told them about the sandstorm, about getting lost, and about how he was rescued. But he spoke carefully, sharing the parts of the story he believed the community would want others to hear: the kindness, the peace, the gentle strength of their way of life. In the days that followed, friends, neighbors, and co-workers asked him about his trip. He noticed that many of them had assumptions, some based on stories they had heard or things they had seen online. James knew exactly what he had promised, and he stayed true to it. He spoke clearly, calmly, and honestly. He described the community's harmony, their values, their respectful way of living, and how they had saved him without hesitation. People listened with interest. Some were surprised, others curious. A few asked thoughtful questions. James answered them all honestly, never adding or changing anything, only sharing what he had seen and felt. Soon his story spread. Not in a dramatic or exaggerated way, but quietly, through conversations and social interactions. A local newspaper even reached out to him after hearing about his experience. James agreed to share his story, but only in a respectful, truthful manner. He made sure that nothing was sensationalized or distorted. The article highlighted the kindness of the community that had helped him, the lessons he had learned, and the importance of respecting cultures different from one's own. Many people read it. Some said it opened their eyes. Some said it changed their perspective. James felt grateful. He was fulfilling the promise he had made under the shade of the large tree, in a peaceful settlement that he still carried in his heart. As months passed, James often found himself thinking about the community. He wondered how they were, how the children were growing, and how the land looked under different seasons. He treasured the bracelet on his wrist and the stone pendant around his neck, reminders of a time that had shaped him more than he expected. He knew he might never return physically, out of respect for their privacy. But he also knew that some journeys never truly end. They stay with a person, guiding their choices, shaping their thoughts, and reminding them of what truly matters. James lived his life more thoughtfully after that. He became more patient, more observant, and more connected to nature. He found peace in simple moments, like watching the sunrise or feeling the wind on his face. These small things reminded him of the community's values and the calmness they carried in their daily lives. And every time someone mentioned the desert or asked him about his travels, he felt a quiet warmth inside his chest. He would smile softly and say, "I once got lost there, but it changed my life." He kept his promise, not out of obligation, but out of gratitude. The truth he shared became a bridge between two worlds, the world he came from and the world he was trusted to understand. And though many years passed, James never forgot the community that rescued him, guided him, and trusted him with their story. Their truth became part of his own journey, a gentle reminder that sometimes getting lost can help a person find something far greater than a path, something that touches the heart and stays forever.